Rule 15. Seek impartial sources. And exercise set 4-1 from a workbook for arguments by Morrow and Weston. People who have the most at stake in a dispute are usually not the best sources of information about the issue involved. Sometimes they may not even tell the truth. People accused in criminal trials are presumed innocent until proven guilty, but we seldom completely believe their claims of innocence without confirmation from impartial witnesses. Readiness to tell the truth as one sees it, though, is not always enough. The truth as one honestly sees it can still be biased. We tend to see what we expect to see. We notice, remember, and pass on information that supports our point of view, but we may not be quite so motivated when the evidence points the other way. Therefore, look for impartial sources, people or organizations who do not have a stake in the immediate issue and who have a prior and primary interest in accuracy, such as some university scientists or statistical databases. Don't just rely on politicians or interest groups on one side of a major public question for the most accurate information about the issues at stake. Don't just rely on manufacturers' advertisements for reliable information concerning their products. Okay, my car dealer recommends that I pay $300 to rust-proof my car. He should know. I guess I'd better do it. Well, he probably does know, but he might not be entirely reliable either. The best information about consumer products and services comes from independent consumer testing agencies, agencies not affiliated with any manufacturer or provider, but answering to consumers who want the most accurate information they can get. So do some research. All right, here's a better version. Experts at Consumer Reports say that rust problems have almost vanished in modern cars due to better manufacturing, and advise that rust-proofing is not needed. And then we see the long citation for this. On political matters, especially when the disagreements are basically over statistics, look to independent government agencies such as the Census Bureau, or to university studies or other independent sources. Organizations like Doctors Without Borders are relatively impartial sources on human rights situations in other countries because they practice medicine, not politics. They're not trying to support or oppose any specific government. Of course, independence and impartiality are not always easy to judge either. Be sure that your sources are genuinely independent and not just interest groups masquerading under an independent-sounding name. I think this is especially a problem these days. Check who funds these groups, check their other publications, look for their track record, watch the tones of their statements. Sources that make extreme or simplistic claims, or spend most of their time attacking and demeaning the other side, weaken their own claims. Again, seek out sources that offer constructive arguments and responsibly acknowledge and thoroughly engage the arguments and evidence on the other side. At the very least, try to confirm for yourself any factual claim quoted from a potentially biased source. Good arguments cite their sources, so you should look them up. Make sure the evidence is quoted correctly and not pulled out of context, and check for further information that might be helpful. All right, exercise set 4-1, identifying biased sources. So, the objective of this exercise set is to help you guard against biased sources. Here's a few tips for success. An impartial source is an unbiased source. This exercise asks you to find biased sources, sources that you would not want to use in your arguments because they're not impartial. So what we're looking for is what we're not looking for when we make good arguments. Here's one way to come up with biased sources. Ask yourself what answers different people might give to each question in this exercise. Then, for each answer, ask yourself whether there's someone who'd benefit from convincing you of that answer. People can benefit in various ways from convincing you of a particular answer. Sometimes people benefit financially. For instance, a sales clerk at a store gains financially by convincing you that the jeans you're considering look great on you. Sometimes people stand to gain in other ways also. For instance, A candidate for a political office can get extra votes by convincing voters that his or her opponent's corrupt. Thus, the sales clerk is a biased source about the genes you're considering, and the politician is a biased source about his or her opponent. Remember, though, that sources can be biased even if they don't stand to benefit from pushing a particular answer. Sources who are likely to reach a particular answer regardless of the truth are also biased. For instance, suppose you ask the parents of a player on a high school basketball team whether their children are better than the average player on the team. A significant majority of parents would probably say that their child is above average, even though it's unlikely that a significant majority of the players really are better than average. The parents don't stand to gain anything by convincing you that their child's better, but notice that they're still biased. This extends more generally to individuals' beliefs about how they compare to others. Individuals are frequently biased when it comes to rating their own abilities. For example, a study published in 1981 by Ola Svensson of the University of Stockholm found that 93% of Americans rated themselves as better drivers than the median driver. A similar study, published in 1986 by Ian McCormick and his colleagues at Victoria University at Wellington, found that up to 80% of drivers consider themselves above average. All right, here's the instructions for this exercise set. For each of the questions below, think of one source that would not be impartial. Explain why that source would not be impartial. You don't need to name a specific person. You can simply describe what kind of person you have in mind. All right, let's look at a couple of examples. Here's the sample. Are e-cigarettes safer than regular cigarettes? So who might be a biased sample for this? An executive at a tobacco company is a biased source. The executive has a strong financial incentive to convince people that e-cigarettes are no safer than regular cigarettes. If people believe that the two kinds of smoking are equally bad for their health, they're less likely to switch from regular cigarettes to e-cigarettes, and the company will do better. Question 1. Is it worthwhile to buy an extended warranty on a new appliance? What would be a biased source for this? The employees at a major electronics store chain may be biased sources. They may tell you to buy the warranty even if it's mostly unnecessary, especially if they get bonuses or other perks for selling warranties and other add-ons. Question 3. What's the best university in the United States? What would be a biased source for this? The president of one of the top-ranked universities in the United States is a biased source. Part of a university's president's job is to promote that university, and so no matter what he or she really thought, the president of a top-ranked university is going to insist that his or her university is the best. Question 5, this will be the last one. Do vaccines weaken children's immune systems? So, who might we choose as a biased source for this? Well, one biased source would be a celebrity who gets a lot of money and publicity by writing books about how vaccines weaken children's immune systems. See? Such a celebrity would have a lot to lose by acknowledging that vaccines don't, in fact, weaken children's immune systems, and so they would be a biased source.